as you can hear, from Australia. Currently lives in Sur Hadassah in Israel, and also is on the faculty of the law at Bar Ilan University, and works extensively with the Turkish community of the Turkish Jewish community, and does so many great things. Is a phenomenal teacher and storyteller, and yeah, I'm very excited that we're going to have the opportunity to learn with him today. Without further ado.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to Rabbi Walkenfeld and to Rabbanit Leah Sana. I'm honored to be here, and it's very exciting to be able to be teaching from so far away. It is certainly a shame that I'm not there with you. I was really looking forward to coming to Chicago, and I can see even over the video some familiar faces, and I was hoping to be there. Wasn't to be, at least not this time, but I'm happy to at least have the opportunity to learn together with you this evening. As Binyamin mentioned, I am originally from Melbourne, Australia, so you'll notice that I don't have an accent, and if there's anything that I say or in any language or lack of accent that doesn't come through clearly, so feel free to just wave me down, slow me down, and I'll be happy to try and fill in any gaps. What we're going to do this evening, Mitch, did you get enough information? You were a bit nervous beforehand.
I maybe some background about yourself, like where'd you learn? I would like that. I don't know if anyone else likes it. Maybe everyone knows you, so.
I'll be happy to fill in all that information, but maybe let's perhaps get to some of the texts and some of the ideas that we're going to discuss. And if there's any questions that are outstanding at the end, I'll be happy to relate to them. And what we'll do is, as we're going through, if people have questions, so there is the raise hand function. You can also give reactions. One of the great things about Zoom is that they give you two choices for reactions. You can either give a person a round of applause or you can give them the thumbs up. There's no way of telling them that you don't really like what you're doing. Have you noticed that? Right? Someone give me a thumbs up on that one at least. Let's just check that all the buttons are working here. Okay. So we are going to try over the next hour to talk about the merging of two different worlds. One world is the Hasidic world, and the other world is the world of Zionism and the State of Israel. Now, when you say Hasidus and Israel, so there's a lot of background and many of us have a lot of baggage. I'm going to ask that for the next hour, let's put our baggage aside and let's try to have an opportunity, take advantage of this opportunity to go in a direction that maybe not everybody has seen before tonight's learning. When we talk about Hasidus or the Hasidic movement and the State of Israel, broadly speaking, we can define or we can identify three different approaches to Israel within the Hasidic movement. I'm going to start with the mainstream approach, and this is true for the majority of Hasidim. The majority of Hasidim would define their relationship to the State of Israel. I would define it as a Zionist. A Zionist, meaning they're not particularly into the Zionist movement. They don't see the State of Israel in any miraculous way. And they're not against it. They're pragmatic. And that's the majority of the Hasidim, if you're following what's going on here in Israel. So until very recently, the Minister of Health here was a Gera Chosid. And the Hasidim have served in governments and even in the Knesset, continuing in very many ways what was the norm in Poland, where Hasidim served in the Polish parliament. So that's what we would define as the mainstream approach amongst Hasidim. You all with me so far? A Zionist. Now, another approach is an approach that we'd have to define amongst the Hasidim as being anti-Zionist. There are groups in the Hasidic world who are not just, well, we're not so into the state as a miraculous event. They think the state of Israel is the worst thing in the world. So this is an opportunity for you to share some ideas with me. Which Hasidic group falls into that category? You can raise your hand. Oh, so I already see David Wallach has jumped in with Satmar. So Shkoyach David, you must have been in a very good Hasidus class when you studied in Pardes. And except Satmar really gets the bronze medal. I'll explain what I mean in a moment. But he was third in line. Now, I know there's not official rankings. There's no official rankings in Hasidim. I'm in charge of those not official rankings. So Satmar's third. Who would be higher there? Who would be more anti-Zionist than Satmar? Who's game? Who's going for it? I can see in the chat a few guesses. Wolkenfeld, Rabbi David Wolkenfeld, top answer, comes in with Munkach. And that's right, Munkach was number one, the most vehement anti-Zionist that you can imagine. Let's get a picture up of him on the screen. The totally anti-Zionist. You can see that? Can we see him yet? We'll get him there. There we are.
There he is.
The Minchas Elazar, Reb Chaim Elazar Shapira, the most vehement anti-Zionist, the person who, he had a sharp tongue, maybe just to sprinkle some spice. The Balfour Declaration. How do you say the Balfour Declaration in Hebrew? Hatzarat Balfour. The Munkacher described it not as Hatzarat Balfour, but Tzarat Baal Peor. Tzarat, the trouble of Baal Peor, Avodah Zorah. Or you're all familiar, I'm sure, with Kamtza and Bar Kamtza. Kamtza, the Gemara says, Al-Kamtza uvar Kamtza Chorva Yerushalayim, because of a fight between two people. Kamtza and Bar Kamtza, that's why Jerusalem was destroyed. Said the Munkacher. You know what Kamtza? Kamtza's Rosh Tevis. Kommunisten, Mizrachisten, Zionisten, Agudisten. Communists, Mizrachi, our sponsors tonight, Zionim, and even Aguda. He was against everybody. So the Munkacher was the number one spokesperson. Who was the number two anti-Zionist in the Hasidic movement? And this one will surprise you, I think. Anyone want to have a guess before we try it?
Lubavitch.
We know that David Wallach, oh yes, go Mitch.
Lubavitch?
Lubavitch, well done Mitch, glad you came tonight. Lubavitch, he's number two and not, just let's clarify, not the current Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory, and not his father-in-law, the Rayatz, but the Rayatz's father, the Rebbe Rashab, number two. So why was David Wallach's suggestion, Satmar, Rabbi Yoelish, still a good guess? Because he was the understudy of the Munkacher. But you have to understand that the Munkacher, he died in 1937. The Rebbe Rashab from Lubavitch, he died in 1920. Rabbi Yoelish of Satmar was the Hasidic master who had to deal with the greatest achievement of the Zionist movement, namely What's the greatest achievement of the Zionist movement?
The establishment of the state.
The establishment of the State of Israel. And therefore, he was the thinker that he had to come along and say, how are we going to respond? And he responded to it in a work called Vayoel Moshe. Vayoel Moshe. What did the Satmar Rebbe say? So if we have a look at our source sheets, the Satmar Rebbe, Rabbi Yoelish, he based himself primarily on a particular Gemara, a Gemara that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and I don't want to learn through the whole Gemara tonight, but maybe we should just highlight one passage so we're all on the same page. Let's get the source sheet up, and you can see on the second page of the source sheet, I've brought the Gemara. We're not going to learn through the entire Gemara. I just want to highlight for you this passage, a sugya that's known as Sholosh Hashvuos, the 3 oaths. And the Gemara says over here that there were 3 oaths following on from Shir HaShirim. There were 3 oaths that God made people swear. 1, the first oath, can follow with me on the sheet, Shelo Ya'alu Yisrael b'choima, that the Jewish people will not go up b'choima. And if we scroll, we don't have Rashi on this page, what is b'choima? Going up with strength as a wall, everybody going up together. That was 1 oath. The second oath, She'eshpiya HaKadosh Baruch Hu es Yisrael, Shelo Yimradu ba'umay ha'olam, that God made the Jewish people swear that they will not rebel against the nations of the world. The third oath is a bit less Rabbi Yodish's ideas, less relevant. She'ishpiya HaKadosh Baruch Hu es ha'ovdei koichavim, shelo yishtabdu bahem b'Yisrael yoseh midai, that the nations of the world will not enslave the Jewish people more than necessary or too much. Said Rabbi Yoelish, look at this Gemara, a Gemara that's clear as day. You're not allowed to go up to Israel, you're not allowed to rebel against the nations of the world. And the entire Zionist movement is all about rebelling and about going up. And that was the basis of his work, Vayoel Moshe, which is divided into 3, and the first section is Ma'amar Shalosh Shvuot. Talks about this Gemara. Those are the two of the 3 approaches. The third approach, my friends, not the anti-Zionists and not the a-Zionist approach, but the third approach is somewhat surprising and less well known. There were Hasidim, particularly from the Rishon Hasidus, various branches of Rishon Hasidus, that were pro-Zionist. And they believed in the Zionist movement, and they supported Zionism, and they were some of them were members of the Mizrachi, the proto-religious Zionists of today. And there were some of the Rebbes who were active as in the Zionist movement. And that brings me to our hero for today. And today we're going to be talking about Rabbi Yaakov Friedman. Rabbi Yaakov Friedman, and give a few words of background before we get to the text itself. Rabbi Yaakov Friedman was born in Bohush in Romania, and he married his second cousin, Chaya Sora Rochel, at which point he left Romania, I think he was 17, and he went to live in the house of his in-laws in Hosiaten. His father-in-law was the Rebbe of Hosiaten, and Hosiaten was situated on the border between the Russian Empire and the Austrian Empire. Now, those of us who have a classic Western education, when we learned about World War I, we were made to read a book called All Quiet on the Western Front. Who's familiar with that book? Who read that book? All Quiet on the Western Front. It's a classic. You had to read it. And in Australia, we knew about the Western Front. We also, of course, knew about Gallipoli. Very important for Australian collective memory. So we learned about Gallipoli and we learned about the Western Front. And I can admit, as a kid in Australia, it never occurred to me, one second, if there's a Western Front, then there's probably an Eastern Front. And let me tell you, my friends, that for our story, from our perspective, the Eastern Front of World War I caused more havoc for our people than the Western Front. Because the Eastern Front went right through the heartland of Hasidus. In fact, for some time during World War I, Hosiyatan itself was divided. Half of it was on one side, half of it on the other side, and the border went right through the middle of the town where there's a river. So at the beginning of World War I, many people in the Eastern Front fled. In the case of the Friedman family, the Hosiyatan Rebbe, together with his daughter and son-in-law and family, they fled first to Bad Homburg, just outside Frankfurt, and from there to Vienna. When they're in Vienna, young Rabbi Yaakov Friedman, the son-in-law of the Hosiyatan Rebbe, together with a few of his cousins, who are also region Rebbes to be, they establish an organization called Chevrat Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. And in 1920, this organization that tries to promote settling in Israel joins Mizrachi, becomes part of the Mizrachi movement. Now in 1937, the whole family, the Hosiyatan Rebbe and all his family, including Rabbi Yaakov Friedman, they decide to make Aliyah. Now that's an important year, 1937. What can you tell me about what's going on in 1937 in Vienna? Or you know what, you can tell me even better. What hasn't happened yet in Vienna?
Anschluss.
Anschluss, thank you, 443-205. What's your name, Ravid? And so, before the Anschluss, in other words, they know about what's going on in Germany over the border, but the family moves to the land of Israel, to the British Mandate of Palestine, out of purely Zionist reasons. Where do you think you're finally the dream of coming to the land of Israel? Where are you going to settle? Where are you going to live? So I think many of us, Jerusalem, Rochelle, thank you, Jerusalem. That's of course what I would have thought, but no. The family goes and settles. It's a Zionist dream in the first Hebrew city. Where do they go to live? Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv. And they go to Tel Aviv because they say Tel Aviv, this is the Zionist dream, a Hebrew city. And at that time, my friends, Tel Aviv is the only city within the land of Israel, listen to this, that doesn't have a church. So they say, we want to live this is the dream. And they go and settle in Tel Aviv. I'll just show you something really lovely. Look at this, guys. This, coming back to our PowerPoint for a moment, look at that. You can see that is the request, the application for Palestinian citizenship of Rabbi Yaakov Friedman. His wife's mentioned here, Chaya Sarah. And This is the application. They arrived in 1937. You can see that on the right of screen, line 3. I can just highlight that for you. There we are. There's 1937. But the application for citizenship is filed in 1940. That's their application. And there you get a picture of what Rabbi Yaakov Friedman and his wife looked like. Lovely images. When they're asking for a certificate of naturalization. And they rent this house on Rehov Bialik, Rehov Bialik in Tel Aviv, number 19. This is the house before they arrived. And this is the house a couple of years ago when I was there in 2010. Unfortunately, it is not in a very good situation. So they settle in Tel Aviv, and from 1937 until his death in 1946, Rabbi Yaakov Friedman delivers drashot regularly, and those drashot are collected posthumously and published in a work entitled Oleic Yaakov, the Oleic Yaakov. And the Oleic Yaakov is a fascinating work. Now, according to what I heard, there are a number of manuscripts still floating around from his drashot on Yom Ha'atzmaut. I haven't seen them yet. I doubt they're in Chicago. But if you do find them, please let me know. But at least two of his drashot, two of his Zionist speeches, two of the Zionist speeches made their way into this work, Oleic Yaakov. And that's the reason why you can't buy this in regular bookshops. It's not on the regular Hasidic shelves, even in Haredi areas, because if it was, you have to buy it privately, because the material, some of the material, particularly what we're going to learn now, is explosive. Let's go to that. Let's go and have a look at that and open our source sheet and have a look at this drasha. Let's understand when this drasha was delivered. The drasha was delivered, as it says on the top, Shabbat Parshat Emor Tafshin Chet Vav Emor on Friday, Huchraza Hamadina Ha'ivrit Be'eretz Yisrael. So this is a drasha that was given less than 24 hours after the establishment of the state. Let's wind back, my friends. 1948, the British Mandate is set to end at midnight. Midnight, alas, turns out to be Shabbos. And so therefore, the Zionist leadership, led by David Ben-Gurion, decide that they're going to announce the establishment of a state of Israel before the end of the British Mandate. And in one of the worst kept secrets in the history of diplomacy, they sent out secret invitations that everybody knew about to come to Beit Dizengoff on Rothschild Street in Tel Aviv for a ceremony at 4 o'clock to announce the establishment of the state of Israel. For the Americans in the room, President Truman didn't recognize the state immediately. He waited until after 12 o'clock, midnight in Israel, till the end of the British Mandate. He waited, and then he recognized the state. So the state is declared Erev Shabbos, and the drosha in front of us was given by the Oleic Yaakov around 24 hours later. And how far away is he? I'm telling you, Rothschild to Bialik, it's a 15-minute walk. So he's right there. Let's have a look at what he says. He opens up with the following. Anu omdim b'milchama kveida We're in a very difficult war, Milchemet Magen, a war of defense. כוחות החושך והטומאה נאספו עלינו למנוע שלטון ישראל. The forces of darkness and impurity gathered against us to prevent a Jewish rule. אף על חלק קטן של ארץ ישראל, even on a small part of Eretz Israel. What's he referring to? What's that small part of Eretz Israel? What's he referring to?
What the United Nations granted the Jews.
Excellent, Binyamin. You must have taken a very good Hasidus class once upon a time. He's talking about the partition plan. Ein anu dochakim et haketz. We are not trying to push for the end. Aval haketz dochek otanu. The end is pushing us. Hatzarot v'atlaot v'amoraot hadavim. The pains and the troubles and the tribulations and the bloody history of the last 10 years, dachafunu le'eretz Yisrael, that pushed us to hit the land of Israel. V'yichrichunu lema'amatzim bekivun rikat ol zarim me'al tzavarenu, pushed us to efforts to get rid of the weight, the yoke of the foreigner from over our necks. V'shichur ha'aretz midei nochrim, and to free and to liberate our land from the hands of strangers. Gam lo maradnu be'omot ha'olam. We didn't rebel against the nations of the world. Halo hem hikiru b'zchutenu al medina atzmait be'eretz Yisrael. They recognized our right to have an independent land on the independent country in the land of Israel. What's he referring to? When did they recognize? What's he referring to?
Haftet b'November.
Haftet b'November. He's referring to the Balfour Declaration. He's referring to the San Remo Conference of 1920. All the international instruments that recognized the Jewish right to a homeland. He says, we didn't rebel. Sorry, I missed the line. Gam lo alinu b'choma. We didn't go up yachad biyad chazaka. We didn't invade the land of Israel. No. Ki im berishonot knisa. We had permission. We had certificates from the British mandate that gave us the right to come in. Ma'at. We came in we trickled in, or betzina, or we came in secretly. Lo ishtamashnu boniyot milchama. We didn't try to come with warships. Adarabah. On the contrary, umot haolam hem avru al shvuatam. You want to talk about who's going against the oaths? Not us. We didn't go against the oaths. The one who went against the oaths were the nations of the world. Why? Their oath was lo lishtabed b'Yisrael yoter midai. And what did they do? Hem hosifu lahara. They did much worse. Inu v'ratzchu. They afflicted us. They pained us. They murdered us. So these 4 lines, my friends, are unbelievable. Who's he responding to?
Satmar.
Right. This is a response exactly. You can see he's responding. The Oleic Yaakov is responding to the claims that the Satmar Rebbe, and not just the Satmar Rebbe, but he was the main spokesperson in the Hasidic world, and he's saying, no, we didn't come up b'choma. We haven't gone against any shvuot. And that's the first volley, the first thing that he says after the establishment of the State of Israel. But that's not all, my friends. Uvechen, anu mekavim umitpalalim. We hope and pray. Ki Elohim Yoshia Zion, God will save Zion, v'yivneh arei Yehuda, and will build the cities of Judah. V'zera avadav yinchalua, and the children of God's servants will inherit that land. V'ohavei shemo yishkenu ba, and those who love God's name will dwell in it in the land. Why does he choose that pasuk? There's so many psukim that he could choose. And look what he does with it, my friends. Pasuk ze hu b'Teilim sof פרק ס"ט. ואחר כך מתחילה פרשה י'. It's the end of chapter 69, and now chapter 70 starts off, למנצח לדוד להזכיר. And Rashi quotes the Midrash Tehillim and says, connects the two. When it says that God will save Zion, Harei Hadir Banui, the pen or the sheep shed. The sheep shed is built. V'hatzon kanus, and the sheep are in the sheep shed. V'haroeh ze David, and the shepherd, lo nizkar, where's the shepherd David? Lekach ne'emar, lamnatzeach leDavid leYizkir. Very nice that we have Israel, but the shepherd, David, is still missing. And now listen to what he does with this idea. That's what the Medrash says. That's what Rashi quotes. I'm sure you're familiar with that. But look at what he does with it. Zot omeret, kasher Elokim yoshia Tzion, when God will save Zion, lamrot iyumei oiveinu, despite the threats of our enemies, v'ivneh arei Yehuda v'zera avada b'inchalo, and he'll build the cities of Judah. Tzarich la'azkir et David. We still need to remember David. What does it mean we need to remember David? Klomar, tzarich lizkor, we need to remember ki hakamat medinat hamedina hayehudit, that establishing a Jewish state, af ki ein aroch lechashivuta, its importance is immeasurable. But steady on, mate. Adayin eina hageula hamekuva shuvtacha lanu. This is still not the redemption that we hoped for, that has been promised to us. Hageula hamitit kshura beviat Mashiach ben David. The true Geula is linked to the Messianic era. So on one hand, the Yaakov says clearly, this is a great event. This is unbelievable, immeasurable. And yet, this is not the end in itself. And then he adds two words. LeDavid lahazkir. And those two words added on at the end are a little bit strange. What do you mean? That's what you just said. It's connected to Beviat Mashiach ben David. So now I want to suggest to you an idea, but I don't know if this is really what he meant, and if it's not the Yaakov, then this is the Torah of the Maggid of Melbourne. I don't know if this is, you decide what you want to do with this. Who's the most famous David on that day? Which David is everybody talking about?
Ben Gurion.
David Ben Gurion. Says the Yaakov. David la'azkir. Ben Gurion's done a great thing, but we need to remind him that this isn't the end. We need to remind the great David Ben Gurion that he is not the Messiah. This is a stage. We still have a lot more work to do. What work do we have to do? And this is unbelievable. Look at the next paragraph with me. V'od tzarich lizkor. We have to also remember b'shat hakamat hamdina, when the state is being established, et tna'ei hakiyum shel hamdina. We need to know what are the conditions for the existence of the state. Aleph, shalom v'achdut. Halo hamachloket hayta sibat hachurban. Infighting was the reason for destruction. And therefore, if we want our state to survive, we need shalom v'achdut. Binyamin, I'll get to you in a moment. And bet, the second condition, kedusha v'tahara, holiness and purity. Kakatuv b'sof parshat kedoshim. Look at that. What parsha is next week? Achrei Mot Kedoshim. I'm giving you guys a free Dvar Torah. Sign up for tonight. You get a Dvar Torah already for Shabbos. You're set. Parshat Kedoshim v'omar lachem atem tirshu et admatam shel hagoyim yoshvei haaretz. You will inherit the land. V'yitem li kedoshim ki kadosh ani. Zeu hatnai. You want to know what the condition is to have the land? You need to be a holy people. Eretz Yisrael hi bevchinat parterim shel melech. The land of Israel is the palace of the king. V'hu tzarich liot naki mikol shemetz chel'ah. And therefore, the land of Israel needs to be clean from any trace of dross, of despicable behavior. I'm not just talking about the things that are mentioned at the end of Parshat Acharei Mot and Parshat Kedoshim. Mitzvot Hashem kulan, all of the mitzvot, b'li yotzei min haklal, with no exception, nitnu letaher u'lekadesh et Yisrael. The point of the mitzvahs are to sanctify and to purify Israel. Ka'amur b'tanchuma, as it says in the Midrash, Aimarot Hashem amarot torot. The words of God are pure words. Kol ma shakadosh baruch hu mazhir et Yisrael. Whatever God warns or tells the Jewish people to do, hu bishvil kedushatam v'taharatam, for their holiness, for their purity. Im ken, stay with me, Binyamin. I know you've got your hand up, brother. Im ken, shmirat kol mitzvot Hashem b'shleimutam, keeping all the mitzvot in their entirety. Hitnai kiyum shel hamdina. That is the condition for the existence of our state. And now the next line. If the next line's the only line you hear tonight, it was worth coming. Because you think he's talking about the now, so what do we have to do? What are the mitzvahs? What do we got to do? You expect him to say, so can everybody please go down the corner and get Ben Gurion? Walk away, it's only 15 minutes away. Let's chap him for a minyan. Poor guy probably hasn't done a mincha ma'ariv yet. Let's bring him in. Right? Let's check. Did he put on tefillin? I hope not. It's Shabbos. Right? That's no. That's not the first mitzvah that the Yaakov mentions. Look at the next line. Hine ha-mitzvah, moznei tzedek, avnei tzedek, eifas tzedek, v'hin tzedek yeh lachem. He mentions the first mitzvah that he mentions is about weights and measures. That everything needs to be above board and business dealings need to be upright. Halohi min ha-mitzvot hanogim lemasa u'matan. This is referring to mitzvot that have to do with business dealings. Sheben adam lachavero, between one person and another. Even a person who transgresses this mitzvah and lies about how much what they're doing in business dealings, that's what causes Galut Yisrael. Unbelievable. You're going to choose one mitzvah to mention. We'll see two in a second. You're going to start with which mitzvah? Where are you going to start? Shabbos afternoon, talk about keeping Shabbos, no? Talk about how to keep Shabbos in Tel Aviv. No. The Yaakov says the number one mitzvah that we have to think about at the moment, 24 hours after the establishment of the state, is how do we make sure that our state is an honest state? And then he quotes Rav Chaim Vital, who says, Lo yigolu Yisrael me'aratzom, ela al she'ovru al posuk midvar sheker tirchak. Golus, says Rav Chaim Vital, comes because people are not being honest. I want to tell you, friends, when I read this, so inspired. I couldn't believe it. I thought he would say something about Shabbos. No. Be honest in business dealings. Bein Adam lachaveiroi. And b'shas hakomas hamadina. Benjamin's reminding me he's got his hand raised. Go ahead, Benjamin. Question, go ahead. Yeah, we can stop for questions. Sorry, I just get so excited. This source I find so relevant to even our reality. A source written, a drosha given in 1948 that still has relevance, I feel, for me. And as a challenge, like what do I need to be talking? I live Tzur Adasa, my friends. Mitch, you want to know more? Tzur Adasa, my friends, is not a religious neighbor, is not a religious place. The majority of people here are traditional. There's a strong Chiloni element. And we're the minority, the Datiyim here. What's my message? What do I have to say? What's my contribution? It's not an extra mincha ma'ariv. It's about being an honest man, being a mensch, being an erlich yid. So that's why I find this to be so inspiring. Go ahead, Binyamin, your question.
My question was, this Korban at the beginning, is he referring to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, or is he potentially also referring to the Holocaust?
I think there's a double meaning. Let's remember that this is before terms like Shoah have been used, and the traditional term for Holocaust at this time certainly amongst the religious people is Churban Yadus Europa, right? The destruction of European Jewry. And they refer to it as the Churban. Shoah will be a term that will come into play later, and even today, it's associated, it has a certain connotation. That's not what I've been invited for, not to talk about the Shoah, but to talk about the Hasidus and the establishment of the state. There was a second hand. Someone else also had their hand up, and I didn't catch who it is. Jonathan Bressler.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, Shalom Aleichem. Go for it, brother.
My question was about some of the uses, the way he's using some of the psukim from like Acharim al-Kedoshim. It seems like he's sort of talking about he's talking about tahara not in the literal physical sense, and that there is a way of achieving that state through other actions. Is that common in the Chassidut to sort of take tahara and make it not physical at all, none of it physical, about literally contracting tuma and things like that?
Yeah. Yes, so that's a good question. There's, I think, a little bit beyond the scope of our discussion tonight. But just to touch on it, I reckon that Hasidus needs to be read as a continuation of the Midrashic tradition, or as a permutation of the Midrashic tradition, or an iteration of the Midrashic tradition. And if that's the case, then this is a common Midrashic tool. You're 100% right in noticing that he's not talking about going to the mikveh. He's talking about tahara in a totally different way, which I don't know what the situation is in Chicago, right? The tensions about what's going on in the mikveh with mikvahs here. And my wife, who's in charge of the mikveh here in Tzur Hadassah, every day she has to go and change the water and how many people. It's really very complex. Men's mikvahs are closed. Mikveh kelim mikvahs are closed. But there's tahara that's not necessarily just about going to the mikveh. And yes, that exists elsewhere in Hasidus. How common is it? That already, I think, is beyond the scope. I'm not sure that I have a good answer for that. But thank you, Jonathan, for noticing. That's a good observation. Was there anyone else who I missed who had a comment or a question? No? Okay. I don't see anybody else, so we're going to continue. B'shas hakomas hamadina. Let's do two more paragraphs. B'shas hakomas hamadina, at the time of the establishment of the state, tzarich lizkor heitev es kol t'na'ei kiyuma. You have to remember, we need to remember all the requirements, all the conditions of the state's existence. Lo rak sidurei inyonei ha'kalkala v'hatzava v'yachasim ha'beinlaumiyim. Not just how the economy is going to work and the army and international relations. They're not the only t'na'ei kiyum. That's not the only things that are dependent or that require our attention. And now I don't know why this passage in the Oleic Yaakov is printed in brackets. Perhaps it's an interpolation from another drosha, I'm not sure, but the text is worth learning either way. And it also gives us a Dvar Torah for 2 weeks' time. Emor v'amarta. The pasuk says at the beginning of Parshas Emor, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Emor el haKohanim b'nei Aaron v'amarta. Say to the Kohanim and say. It's a double expression. So Rashi, in the name of the Midrash, who's a Kohen here? David Wallach, you're a Kohen, no? Oh, Binyamin. I knew it was one of you fellas. Binyamin Kohen, of course. Right? Emor v'amarta. What's going on here? You can say to Binyamin and Emor. What do you need to say to Binyamin? Emor v'amarta. Why the double lashon? Why the double language? Says the Rashi, quoting the Midrash, Lahazhir gdolim al haktanim. This is to tell the Gdolim to tell the older people that they need to also pass this on to the next generation. And then the Olei Yaakov quotes the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, student of the Baal Shem Tov, Ein hakavana dafka al gdolim b'shonim v'ktanim b'shonim. The Toldos Yaakov Yosef says, steady on. We're not just talking about older people teaching younger people. Much deeper. We're talking about people who are gdolim be'emuna v'ktane emuna. People who are confident in their faith and people who find faith a little bit challenging. The obligation of those who are confident in their faith is to affect those who are less confident. And comes back, by being careful in mitzvah shebein adam lachaveroi, efshar la'ashpia b'yoser. If you want to have an impact, says the Olei Yaakov to his people, we, the religious community, we have a responsibility. We have something to give to this state. But it's, you know where that our contribution is going to be? By doing things bein adam l'chaveroi. Surprising, no? I mean, pleasantly surprising. Chevra, I know it's over virtual, but Chevra, I can't feel your excitement here. I'm like, mamish. I read this text. It's not like I've read it even the first time, and I'm so excited again. Through Beitzas Bein Adam L'Chaveiroi, Efshar Hashpia B'Yosef, V'zeh Sha'omar Rav, and this is what Rav said, Hey Chadami Hil Chilul Hashem. Famous Gemara, I'm sure you're familiar with it. What's the definition of Chilul Hashem? Chilul Hashem is not something objective, it's subjective. Kagoin Ano, says Rava, that if I go, Ishakilna Basa Mitavche, if I go and purchase meat from a butcher, V'lo Ya'ivna Dami La'alter, and I don't pay him immediately, I'm good for my money, I'll pay. But I don't have it, it's not exemplary. It's not exemplary conduct. That already is a Chilul Hashem. You can hear what the Olei Yaakov is saying to his people. Chevra, we have something to contribute here. And what we have to contribute to the state is Bein Adam L'Chaveroi, because that will guarantee the survival and the building of the state. The state is the first point, is one point, but we have more to do. Lahazkir LaDavid. And let's remind David Ben-Gurion of that. We're short on time. You've got the text in front of you. You can read the next two paragraphs. I want to go to the last paragraph to conclude our study. Are there any other comments or questions before we bring a few things together, the elements together? Okay. If there are no comments, so if there's no comments, we'll just mention one thing from the previous paragraph. I'm paraphrasing. You can see it there in the text itself. He points out, we're now in the middle of Sfiras HaOmer. We're in the middle of Sfiras HaOmer. We really are. And says the Olei Yaakov, sometimes on Sfiras HaOmer we get stuck on thinking about all the negative things of Sfiras HaOmer. Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim died, and we think about what you're not allowed to do. And this year, are you allowed to have a haircut? You're not allowed to have a haircut. When can you have a haircut? You're not allowed to get married. We get stuck on those things. The Olei Yaakov points out that Sfira is also about counting towards something. It's about going up to Har Sinai. It's about moving forward. And the Olei Yaakov says that's what our position needs to be on this day. We need to be saying, yes, we have a state, Zaffino. But now what? What's our next step? Let's go to the last paragraph and conclude with this, the way the Olei Yaakov concluded his drosha. 24 hours after the establishment of the state, 15 minutes walk from there, where it all happened, on the first Shabbos, and possibly the first Tish. Bnei Yisrael Yakarim, Tayara Yidden, my dear Jews, Hamasulaim Bapaz, who are plated or embedded with plated, but with gold plated. Tayara Yidden, dear Jews, Oimdim b'milchama kveda. They are in a difficult war in Praim with wild people. Umoisrim es nafsham al kvoid amam v'artzam. And they sold for the honor of their people and their land. He's referring to, we know what happened. What happened immediately with the establishment of the State of Israel? War was declared. It was the beginning of a war. And he feels it. We sometimes forget it. Yom Ha'atzmaut was a difficult day. The Tayar Yidden are defending themselves. They're being moise nefesh. What can we do? Here, sitting in Rehov Bialik, number 19, on Shabbos Parshas Emor, what can we do to help our young fighters on the front? And look at the next line, underline it in your versions. Hein kvar avarnu es gil hagius. We're too old to join up. Do you know what that means, if the Rebbe says that? If the Rebbe says that, that means that every person in that room who was not too old, do you know what they did the next day? If the Rebbe said, I'm too old, oh, but I'm not, so now I have to go and join up. This is a call to arms, my friends. I can't join up. But we can still help with holiness, with purity, with tshuva shlema. We also have something to contribute here. And with that, he ends his drosha. Very powerful drosha to my mind. The story of Hosiat and Hasidus, and generally of the Hasidus, of the Hasidic branches that were Zionist. Let me say, we're a dying breed. What happened to Hosiatan? The Yaakov himself passed away in 1956. He was succeeded by his son, who died not long afterwards, and didn't leave any children. And Hosiat and Hasidus didn't continue. The Hasidim often joined other region branches. Some of them went to Bahush, to Chartkov, to Boyan, to Sadiger. And some of them stopped being particularly affiliated with the Hasidic movement because they didn't feel that there was something that could continue this complex position of Hasidus together with Zionism. And it's interesting that nowadays, you'll find amongst religious Zionists in Israel, you don't find many religious Zionists who say, yeah, I'm a religious Zionist, but I'm also a shtickle Gera Chassid. I'm religious Zionist, yeah, but I'm also a Belza Chassid. I'm a religious Zionist and I'm a Satmar Chassid. You don't find such things. But you do find quite a lot of people who say, I come from Rishon roots. And I identify sticking with Rishon. I'm somehow a Rishon Chassid, even though I'm now a modern Zionist. And in some ways, as a movement, as a clear group, It's hard to find, although it continues to exist below the surface. And to my mind, this has something for us today as well. I mentioned as we were learning through the text, some of the takeaways that I have from this text, and that I find this text, a 1948 text, to be so inspirational, even in our times. The emphasis on Bein Adam L'Chaveroi, on the emphasis of being part of the state of Israel and contributing, not being at loggerheads, but finding a way to give. And my final takeaway from this drosha and from this book in general is the challenge to be a complex person, to be a person that's not either Hasidus or Zionism. To be able to say, you know, I can hold both of those. My affiliation with the state of Israel and my spiritual world can be inspired by Hasidus at the same time. And not only at the same time, but they can actually feed into one another and contribute to one another. And so, my friends, it's been a pleasure learning with you over the last hour. I look forward to future opportunities. Thank you all for joining me this evening. And may we all go from strength to strength, both in our spiritual worlds and in our contributions to our state, for we live in fantastic times, in times that our ancestors could not believe would exist. And we are fortunate to live in such times. We'll leave it there for this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your flexibility and for coming to join us in this medium, even though we couldn't have you in person. This was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rabbani. Thank you. If there's any leftover questions that I didn't address, okay, happy to, if there's any questions, just make sure that David Wallach lanes Parshas Emor. It's Bar Mitzvah Parsha. Okay. Any leftover questions or comments?
Mitch has a comment. Mitch, you want to get it in there? Yeah.
Go for it, brother.
Okay, so I do stem from Kutzer Hasidim, just to let you know. We're big Zionists, but back in Europe. So what he says, it seems to be when you're standing in 47, 48, after the Holocaust, this seems to be normative. Why wasn't it like Ger moved to Israel? The Rebbes wanted to move before the war. So why didn't this spread, this shita, this idea, looking at the world and saying, this is what's happening, we've got to embrace this?
Okay, so that's a tough question, Mitch. I'm not sure that I have the answer, but I'm happy to share with you two thoughts. One thought, particularly with regard to 47, 48, remember, it's a period of trauma. And you gave the example of Ger. Ger has just survived a trauma, and they're trying to rebuild. And the person who's entrusted with rebuilding Ger is the Beis Yisrael. And the Beis Yisrael is the anti-Woodstock. Everything you know about Woodstock, he's exactly the opposite. So if Woodstock's about let your hair down and freedom, he leads the charge in his Hasidim in the opposite direction. More rules, more boundaries, and that attracts some people. So I think that the first point is that there is an element of coming out of trauma that's not everybody that leads people in different directions. That's my first point. My second point is I think that what the Oleic Yaakov is, the approach of the Oleic Yaakov is complex. To have multiple loyalties. I think that many of us modern people, we know that that's the way we live our lives. But it's often easier to present an ideology that isn't complex. And I think that that's following the trauma, not the, when the early years of the state, even without the trauma, just trying to build a society, this type of holding more than one world is not an easy ideology to give en masse. So those are two points that I think are part of the reason why it didn't take hold, unfortunately.
I mean, he understood that he was saved. I mean, they secreted him out of Warsaw, and he lost his family.
Not yet. Yeah. Sorry, going back to
so
Gad.
he knew that. He knew what Israel meant. It's just amazing to me. I understand
he knew what Israel meant, but the whole community was in trauma.
Trauma, yeah.
That's what I think. Benjamin, you wanted to add something?
I think it's also very interesting that I think one of the undercurrents of this seems to be like an acknowledgement of Jewish religious diversity, which is like, he's not saying I expect everyone in the state of Israel to be from like us. He's like, he's focusing on things that like anyone at whatever stage of fromness they're in can do. Like David Ben-Gurion is just capable of being an honest, person dealing in business as the Rebbe is, but like if you expect your standard is David Ben-Gurion has to put tefillin on every day of the week except for Shabbos, then you're sort of like doomed to failure in a different way. And I think it's like an interesting.
Are you saying, if I'm trying to understand you, Benjamin, are you suggesting that maybe there is an element here of a strategic move? Let's do something that we can actually achieve, because we're not going to get Ben-Gurion to put on tefillin, but Ben-Gurion could. Well, maybe that's interesting. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't thinking of it strategically, but also sort of like realistically. It's like, these are the people that are here. Let's make the best state out of what we have. And like when the Geula comes down the line, everyone will put on tefillin. But like right now, we can't like make that happen.
Maybe.
Like a menschliche state.
Yeah, I read it a little bit differently. I read it as actual priorities, but I hear your reading. It could be.
I think to Mitch's question, it might well be that for Ger and other houses, the thought that modernization and even Zionism might have had a hand in the Shoah itself in terms of retribution, because it made it emotionally impossible to identify with forces that had been demonized previously and were a possible reason in their minds for God's hiddenness at that point in history.
Thank you for that contribution. Is there anybody else who wants to add anything before I sign off for this evening?
Yes. Do you have any Zoom classes we could attend from Israel?
Yes, I do. I teach
Where do I go? Which website?
I teach in Pardes.
Okay.
And I teach in my community in Tzor Hadassah. So English in Pardes and in my community in Hebrew.
So I just go to the website and.
Pardes. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. I reckon, yeah, probably Benjamin can hook you up with that. We're live here.
On the internet now.
Yeah, Benjamin will give you my email, and I'll find out who you can who to speak to. Okay.
Thank you.
My pleasure, Mitch.
We should probably let you go to sleep. I know it's late there. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Lovely to meet you all, and I look forward to. And thank you for coming out. And I look forward to future opportunities.
Absolutely.
All the best.
Take such good care.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Yes, you should call.
Thank you.